I believe that every guitarist should be able to program realistic drums to create their best work. And so I have created this simple guide as a result of hundreds of hours dedicated to learning this art, so that you can go from this to this. Now, before I begin, it's important to know that drums are essentially just two parts. You have shells and cymbals. Shells constitute the drums. They're the kick, the snare, toms, maybe bongos, whatever. And they all have their own important part to play in the overall composition. Now, cymbals, on the other hand, come in all shapes and sizes, and are often used for keeping time or different artistic expressions. For the sake of simplicity, I'll just keep it to the basics, such as the hi-hat, ride, and crash, and then anything else that you want to implement throughout your writing endeavor can be added as you see fit. Now, when writing drum lines, the most important consideration is realism. And realism can really be thought of as three separate things, all of which have their own importance. The first is limbs, the second is velocity, and the third is time. Now, when a drummer sits down at their kit, chances are they have 4 limbs, 2 legs, 2 arms. This means that the drummer can only effectively hit 4 parts of the kit at any given time. 2 things with their feet, such as the kick and maybe the hi-hat, and then 2 things with their hands, such as a tom and a snare or a cymbal, what have you. This is the first thing to consider when programming realistic drums, as it's so often overlooked. Now, the second part of creating realistic drums is velocity. Each drummer is built a little bit different. Some are going to have longer limbs, some are going to have more fast twitch muscle fiber, some are going to be stronger, all of which leading to harder or softer hits on average for that drummer. But also differences in time, which is the final consideration. Now, chances are, if you were to take the stems of one of your favorite drummers and line them up and zoom in really far in your DAW, you would likely find a misalignment between the strikes that they are doing. So on the kicks, they might vary ever so slightly between the left and right if they have a double kick setup. Or if they're playing a drum fill and hitting 2 toms at the same time, one might be slightly ahead of the other, and one might be slightly harder than the other. This all adds to the feeling of realism, and if left unchecked, will make programmed drums sound very, very robotic. The 2 most important things to consider are velocity and time. Now, when it comes to writing drums, there's 3 different things that I like to write when it comes to creating music. I have a simple riff here loaded into my DAW, and I'll go through a workflow for you to hopefully emulate into your own music so that you can write better music. Now, those 3 things are holding rhythm, pickups or transitions, and fills. So this is the riff that I have. Now, you can get 90% of the point across by just simply holding rhythm and adding subtle accents here and there. I'm going to first start with kicks, and then I'll move to snares for that, head banging feel, and then I'll move to cymbals for the overall sense of time. And this is what the end result should be. Now, as you can see, it's starting to sound like drums. But I still haven't messed around with the velocity and time yet. But first, I'm going to add a pickup in the beginning here. Just a simple little addition to make things, I don't know, a little bit more exciting. You can use something like this as a transition as well if you kind of struggle with maybe writing transitions on guitar or a different instrument. It's just kind of a good placeholder to move from one piece of music to the next. Now, the final thing that you can add, and this probably isn't the best piece of music to do it to, is fills. Now, fills can be either transitions or they can be just kind of something inserted into a piece of music. So I'm going to go here where I have this pinch harmonic. And I'm just going to add something in with the toms, but I'm going to adhere to the whole four-limb thing, so when I add the toms in, I actually have to take cymbals away, potentially. Not my best fill, but hopefully you get the idea. Now the final thing is to actually mess around with velocity and time. Fortunately, Presonus Studio One has a humanize function, and that can kind of give you a good spot to step off from. So all I got to do is click this, and it's going to do a -4 to +4 velocity percent and a shift of about 0.4 of a second either direction. But before I'm going to do that, I'm actually going to turn the velocity up ever so slightly to like, I don't know, 88%. Some velocities are going to be numerical up to like 127. I currently have mine set as a percentage. Whatever works for you, just do that. Now I'll click Humanize. And the differences are very, very subtle. It's not anything too crazy, but when you zoom in, you start to see shifts. And, you know, this one is 88%, this one's 90%, but they're off on their timing ever so slightly. And this is where humanized program drums really start to shine. Because we went from something that, you know, it sounded good, but it was kind of robotic, to this, which is going to sound a lot more realistic. And that's what you end up with. Now, some tips to accelerate your ability to program realistic drums. First is obviously practicing consistently. So writing a piece of music and then writing drums over top of it, erasing them, doing it again. It's going to build a feel for where they actually fall in time. The next thing would be taking a song and trying to recreate the drums for it. Say you want to do a guitar cover. And then the final thing is just listening to your favorite drummers and listening to them with a detailed ear so you can actually pick up their subtle nuances in their playing and then try to replicate that in your own music. Thanks for watching.